following is a special presentation of WAAY 31 News. Changed forever, the April 27 tornadoes.
Changed forever. April's fury devastating the southeast.
This has been the worst thing I've ever had to go through in my life.
Hundreds of people killed across Alabama in the worst natural disaster since Hurricane Katrina.
Almost like a nuclear weapon, hit an area.
Thousands injured and virtually no life left untouched as the state was rocked by multiple EF5 tornadoes.
We're used to having tornadoes in DeKalb County, but we've never seen anything like this.
10 years later, we're revisiting the events of 2011.
We're just going to have to pick up the pieces and start all over again.
And the memories and lessons from that day. This tornado siren is one of dozens replaced or upgraded following the outbreak in 2011. In fact, I'm standing in the area where the Hackleburg-Phil Campbell EF5 tracked through Tanner. At this point in time, it had wind of nearly 200 miles per hour and went on to level homes just down the road. I'm Chief Meteorologist Kate McKenna in Limestone County. That EF5 was one of a record-breaking 362 tornadoes that took the lives of an estimated 321 people in more than a dozen states. The stories behind those numbers paint a picture of loss, of resilience, and a commitment to moving forward. Over the next half hour, we'll introduce to you the people who lost the most that day, their loved ones, their homes, and their lives as they knew them before April 27th, 2011. But as we remember the victims of that day, we're also looking at how their memories and how their legacies inspired life-saving changes for the next generation. April 27th brought what was essentially non-stop severe weather for 24 hours. The first round started before sunrise. The National Weather Service confirmed over a dozen tornadoes touched down in Alabama before 6:30 a.m. In North Alabama, the strongest tornadoes of the morning were a trio of EF2s with wind of 120 miles per hour, one near Holly Pond, one at Lake Gunnersville, and another near Henniger. Around lunchtime, a second round of half a dozen or so weak EF0 and EF1 tornadoes spun up, mainly in Limestone and Madison counties. That's the afternoon wave that would ultimately put this day in the record books. Alabama's deadliest tornado of the day developed at 3 p.m., an EF5 that will go on to kill 6 dozen people, many of them in North Alabama in the small town of Phil Campbell. Those deaths leave a lasting impact on the town of roughly 1,000. WAAY 31's Brecken Terry sat down with people who lived through the storm and its aftermath.
On that day, I lost 7 family members.
It's a miracle the Phil Campbell tornado spared Heather Taylor. She and her husband jumped into the car to get to her family's home on Wyatt Drive, where they thought they would be safer.
It was just the grace of God that we didn't make it because there was a tree on each side of the road and we couldn't get here. So we ran into one of the neighbors' houses that we knew and stayed there and rode the storm out.
When they stepped outside, devastation surrounded them. 210-mile-per-hour winds took Taylor's mom, Patricia Gentry, her stepdad, Don, and many other family members on this small stretch of land.
You don't picture that happening to your family. You see it on movies and things and on the news, but you never picture it happening to you and to your family.
I asked Taylor how she made it through so much loss, pain, and sorrow. She told me in a way her mom prepared her for this moment.
She was like, I just feel like I'm going to be going home soon. And she talked about heaven a lot because, she was a gospel singer and everything, but she never really said that.
The Easter holiday fell on the weekend before the tornado hit. She said it was one last beautiful memory with her loved ones.
At the time, my husband and I were praying for babies and everything, and she just starts asking questions like, what are you going to name your kids? And she gave me little gifts for them and stuff like that. And it's kind of like she was already preparing me.
The storm scattered and destroyed most of the family photos, meaning there are fewer physical reminders of their love. But a friend made sure her 2 boys would always have a connection to her mom and Don through this painting of them all together.
I think that coming up on this anniversary, it just really makes me miss them more, really. makes me realize the years that my kids have missed with them.
Many families in Phil Campbell still wear the emotional scars of April 27th, but so do the first responders who work tirelessly to help their neighbors and community.
We just started pulling people out. We would just go to houses and anybody that was there. I didn't care, if he was hurt or not. We were taking everybody to the Phil Campbell Rescue Squad because that was the command center.
Blue Springs Volunteer Fire Department Chief Mary Glass said there are things she saw on April 27th that she'll never be able to talk about.
When we ran up on the deceased, we had to tag them, and we did that, and that was hard. It was very hard. You would just do the best you could because you knew there was still a lot of people out there.
Volunteers didn't stop working for weeks. At one point, Glass and a fellow firefighter heard crying and found an injured 5-year-old boy in a tree.
Jeremy crawled in and got him out of the trees, handed him to me, and I took off with him.
That's Glass holding the child. He lost both of his parents that day. Glass lost family members too. She said it was hard to process her own grief while surrounded by so much loss.
I know this is bad, but we can't be crying right now. We got to help. And they said, no, you don't understand. Said Mikey and Kelly's got killed. And at the time, it just did not settle in with me who they were talking about because there was so much devastation. And one of them grabbed me and he shook me and he said, do you realize who I'm telling you just got killed? And I said, you said Mikey and Kelly. I said, I don't. He said, Mary, your cousin. And I just started crying.
Glass said only people who lived through that day will understand how devastating it was.
As first responders, we're human too. And usually when you're helping people in your community, you know them all.
A community made up of dedicated first responders, loving families, and resilience. In Phil Campbell, Brecken Terry, WAAY 31 News.
After the storm, Phil Campbell was tasked with not just rebuilding physically, but spiritually. WAAY 31's Marie Waxel covered the aftermath of these storms in 2011 and returned to talk to people who led both of those efforts a decade ago.
I got rotation coming through Phil Campbell right now.
It will never go away.
Retired Phil Campbell Elementary School Principal Jackie Ergel vividly recalls spending hours in the hallway before sending people home.
I would say, Lord, please lift this warning so that we can get our children home. Just let us have time.
10 years later, a scrapbook preserving the town's defining moment in history now sits on a corner shelf in the school's library.
War zone is what I think about.
Each page, a bittersweet reminder of not just the pain, but the compassion that poured in.
We saw the awesomeness of so many through this disaster, but in our hearts, we lost 2 precious children. I'll never forget the day I walked into their classroom to those 2 desks to help the teachers. We had to, clean their little things out, what was left to give to their parents.
Among the deaths in Phil Campbell were 10-year-old Ethan Knox, 9-year-old Edgar Mojica, and 2nd grade teacher Patricia Gentry.
It says Miss Gentry was the best teacher I ever knew. She was a good friend, a great person. She loved each and every one of us.
With the high school and surrounding area leveled, the elementary school turned into a safe haven for the community.
We learned that life isn't certain. We don't know about the next day.
A place to start to heal.
And I'll never forget the day that our children returned to school. They wanted a hug. They wanted to tell you about the tornado, their own interpretations of what happened. And not only that, but in their eyes, you could see that they needed us and we needed them.
You're never going to replace all the people we lost that day.
To this day, former Mayor Steve Bell credits a small group of people who found funding to create the town's memorial park less than a year later.
Started the healing process, just the recognition of those that we had lost. and it's a reminder of what can happen so quickly.
10 years have passed, yet visible scars still remain. Businesses slowly returning. The rebuild not complete.
A lot of the houses have never been built back. A lot of people have not moved back to town. A lot of them just moved away. It changed not only the landscape, but just the complete makeup of town.
It's been a long road for the people of Phil Campbell, and while progress can be seen, the road to recovery never truly ends.
Never give up hope. Never give up hope.
Marie Waxel, WAAY 31 News.
That's just one of the hundreds of stories of survival and resilience we've had the privilege of sharing. Coming up, we'll show you how, in the days following April 27th, people from almost every walk of life come together to step in and rebuild Alabama.
Changed forever, the April 27th tornadoes. You're watching Changed Forever, the April 27th tornadoes, respectfully presented by North Alabama Tree Service and Supercell Shelters.
Before that EF5 tornado hit Phil Campbell, a large tornado dropped from a thunderstorm near Smith Lake in Coleman County. That was at 2:40 p.m. Over the course of the next hour, it grew into a mile-wide monster, packing winds of 175 miles per hour, an EF4, blowing apart homes and businesses, raking the landscape across 3 counties. 9 members of one family were huddled inside a small bathroom in a house in Ruth, not far from Arab in Marshall County. The house exploded around them. 5 of them were killed. One of the survivors was 6-year-old Ari Hallmark. Ari lost both her parents, her paternal grandparents, and a young cousin. But she has turned that unimaginable tragedy into something positive. As WAAY 31's Dan Schaefer shares, for the past 10 years, she's been telling a remarkable story of healing and heaven and a higher purpose.
I was found about 200 yards from the house, somewhere over in this field over here, and my whole family was actually found all together.
10 years ago today, Ari Hallmark's life changed forever. So many lives were lost, so many lives changed that day, of course. But for Ari, right from the day the tornado took her loved ones, she's been at peace, not dwelling on the tragedy, but on her belief in the triumph of eternal life after death.
I think that it was kind of a God thing that, I knew that they were all together and that they were going to be okay because I worried a lot.
Before the tornado, Ari had dreams about her parents dying, whether her grandparents would go to heaven. Not premonitions, she says, just the insecurities of a small child. It seems strange to say, but she says the tornado put her mind at ease about all that.
I got to watch my parents go into heaven.
She remembers watching her family go to heaven that day. And she was there too, briefly, before an angel brought her back to that field where she was found.
I think my main reason, the higher purpose of me surviving is that I have a message. I think that I can help a ton of people. I know that I have. And that brings me peace.
With the help of a family friend who had some counseling experience, a young Ari was able to draw and write about her near-death experience. It became the book, To Heaven After the Storm, and a recent follow-up booklet for children about how she's able to move past the literal and figurative dark clouds of that day.
She's been brave and courageous and told her story ever since.
Ari's maternal grandmother, Susan Garmany, lost her daughter, Ari's mom, in that same storm. She adopted Ari, calls her her grandchild child.
She's a precious girl, and she has a story to tell, and that's what she wants to do, to encourage other people.
A neighbor who lives here off Ruth Road put up this memorial and dedicated it to the 5 people who lost their lives. They planted 5 trees here to represent those lives, and they also etched these words into a granite stone. Those of us who survived owe it to those who didn't to never forget. God bless the memory of the Hallmark family, Philip, Ann, Shane, Jennifer and Jaden, April 27th, 2011. Those of us who survived owe it to those who didn't to never forget. And those are words by which Ari has dedicated and is now living her life.
She's been through it, and she knows, you know, the ups and downs, and she has a lot of ups.
Thanks to her book, Ari hears from others now working through their own grief who have found hope and help in her strength.
They just try to confide in me through my story, and I find joy in that.
As one whose life came so close to being cut so short, she's determined to help as many as she can weather their own storms.
Even though I guess that's about the saddest thing that will ever happen to me, I had something very special happen to me that day, and I'm so glad that I get to share it all with you.
By April 28th, cleanup efforts were happening almost everywhere in the state. Cities, towns, and rural communities immediately stepped up to pick up the pieces of what was left behind. WAAY 31's Pat Simon shares how the Rainsville community did just that.
There was destruction everywhere.
10 years.
It's been overwhelming.
Feels more like 10 seconds ago.
Oh, man.
For Brian Harris, the pastor at Mountain View Baptist Church.
I was more worried about, hey, is everybody okay?
Incredible sight to see you guys.
While the building where he preached inside for so many Sundays was leveled by that fierce tornado.
Tried to just get out and see who needs help.
Its true foundation remained stronger than ever.
The church is the people. It's us. It's God's people. We didn't call anybody. We didn't ask for help.
They didn't need to. Greg Graham is a fifth-generation member of the church. He says kindness and compassion just started showing up.
About 10 cars and trucks pull up, and it's a church from Cherokee County, Alabama, said, we're here to help.
And they did, along with others, to rebuild this church. But before that, as they were sifting through all the debris, the people of this shaken community discovered why they all come together on more than just Sundays.
Yeah, the church bell.
As a kid, Graham and his grandfather repaired that old church bell. It was lost in the storm, but then found.
And now it's part of our sign.
A sign of renewal and hope. Like this restored church piano that was once covered in all that debris.
Those are little things that are witness to our survival.
Perhaps this tattered songbook that was also found, open to this page, says it best.
It says, triumphantly, the church will rise. And it did.
And its members and community did too.
We've always wanted a farm. We've always wanted a lot of land.
Cassie and David Miller now live in this home, built from scratch. Her childhood home was destroyed in the storm, and that wasn't the worst of it. No insurance.
It was just like starting over. I felt like we were 18 again.
They leaned on the church to help them get through.
It's really like family.
In Rainsville, Pat Simon, WAAY 31 News.
The tornado outbreak on April 27, 2011 changed the way that we plan for and respond to severe weather events. Coming up, we'll walk you through the updates that have been made to keep you and your loved ones safe in case something like this ever happens again.
Changed forever, the April 27 tornadoes. You're watching Changed Forever, the April 27 tornadoes, respectfully presented by North Alabama Tree Service and Supercell Shelters.
Even though I'm used to covering tornadoes after all these years, you never probably get used to one coming straight at you.
Even though we settled on our motto, coverage you can count on, within the last few years, it's something our team has always demonstrated. Many of you were watching when meteorologist Gary Dobbs had to stop his live report to take shelter. His home was leveled by an EF5 tornado. He survived with bruises and cracked ribs after being hit by debris as the tornado ripped apart his home. Over the past 10 years, the technology used that day has been advanced and refined to be even more effective during severe weather events. Meteorologist Carson Meredith explains.
You know, I had worked several severe weather events prior to that, and April 27th, it just felt different.
Jessica Chase is the warning coordination meteorologist at the National Weather Service in Huntsville. In 2011, she was working at the National Weather Service in Birmingham, when the warning process was set into motion for a series of powerful supercells that created violent tornadoes, including the EF4 that hit Tuscaloosa and Birmingham.
We never want to be wrong, but we don't want to be right when it comes to severe weather outbreaks.
This is the area that we're looking at.
In the last decade, technology advancements have made it easier to accurately track storms. Dual polarization radars now give us the ability not only to see what's happening inside storms, but also to accurately determine whether or not a tornado is on the ground.
And thanks to smartphones, everyone now receives an emergency alert instantly, no matter where you are. But it's not just the technology that has evolved. Meteorologists now collaborate with social scientists to craft forecast messages and use social media to fine-tune those messages in real time.
Finding out how to message, finding out what words to use, what words are confusing. So we're able to kind of have a little bit more real-time interaction with the public so that, you know, we can quickly change our messaging if it is confusing, or, you know, push out more messaging.
There will always be room for improvement, which is why Chase says the past helps prepare us for the future.
We want to make sure that we go back and look and see, is there something that we can apply from that to future events to better message, better prepare.
In Huntsville, meteorologist Carson Meredith, WAAY 31 News.
The 2011 outbreak also showed us that safe spaces can come in all kinds of forms, and in many cases, the decision to take shelter saved lives. But there's also a new tool we have in our arsenal when it comes to making sure you know what kind of severe weather is heading your way, so that you have plenty of time to get to your safe place. Late in the summer of 2020, we launched the WAAY 31 Storm Tracker Early Warning Radar Network. We now have a network of 3 radars, one in Muscle Shoals, one indicator covering the Huntsville area, and one in Gunnersville. This gives us coverage across all of North Alabama, closing that coverage gap that previously existed around the Shoals, a gap in radar data from the National Weather Service radar sites at High Top, Alabama, and Columbus, Mississippi. So now we've got high quality data for all of North Alabama, and it's live real-time radar data. There's no lag in coverage here. There's no lag in the stream coming into our studio. We are getting minute-by-minute scans. That's up to 6 times faster than those National Weather Service radars that take anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes to produce a single scan. It's also 10 times greater resolution, down to the street level. That makes it easier to find those small, low-level circulations inside a tornado, for example. And we also have complete control over these radars. That means that in the event of severe weather, we can point these radars where we need to provide a better forecast for you. Alabama was changed forever on April 27, 2011. But in the last 10 years, we've made strides to honor and remember the victims while making changes to improve and refine our severe weather plan. It's a work in progress, but the lessons learned every time severe weather strikes saves valuable moments in a worst-case scenario.
Thank you for watching this special presentation of WAAY 31 News. For more than 60 years, North Alabama has turned to WAAY 31 for trusted news, weather, and information. Coverage you can count on air, online, on your phone. WAAY 31.